Hey guys, it's Kyle here and welcome to another video. So guys, this video is all about one of the lesser talked about aspects of Overwatch, which is movement. And before we begin, I just want to say thank you to everyone for all the support recently. It means a lot to me, and I'm really glad I'm able to help somebody learn new things and improve at the game. With that being said, let's jump right in. Alright guys, I'm going to break this video up into 5 different parts. Part 1 will be answering the question, why is movement important? Part 2 is going to be examples of where your movement can change the game. Part 3 is about how to improve your movement. Part 4 is thinking about enemy movement and countering it. And Part 5 will be a conclusion. So guys, let's begin. Alright guys, Part 1 is all about answering the question, why is movement important? I think that a lot of people, especially in the lower skill levels, can sort of overlook movement as a point A to point B kind of thing. I think that in reality, there's a lot more to movement, and if you watch what the pro players do, you'll see them doing all these little tiny micro movements that help them in some way, and there's a real reason for them. I think if you look at your own movement, especially those of you who don't think you're that good, and think about how much you move around, and think about how much you get shot. Part of the great thing about movement is, and part of the great thing about Overwatch and how fast movement is that it helps you stay alive. One of the main reasons why movement is important is survivability. That's the concept I'm going to focus on throughout this video, is survivability. In a game that revolves around team fights, you need to stay alive to be able to dish out that extra damage. Also, if you're dead, you're not helping your team at all. So even if you miss every single shot, you're still an extra body for your opponents to worry about, potentially taking pressure off your teammates who might be doing a little bit more than you. On top of that, like I said, movement is going to help you not block, but dodge a ton of incoming attacks, especially from hit scan characters like Widow and McCree. It's really going to help you stay alive against them and be of more use to your team. And so that's why movement is important. Alright guys, so part 2 is all about examples of where your movement can change the game. And I really do mean that. There is a lot of instances where I have lost a game because I lost a 1v1 duel that I really needed to win. And with that being said, I think 1v1 duels are really where movement can shine. Specifically hit scan heroes like Widow and McCree, Soldier as well. I think that a lot of the times people are losing these 1v1 battles because they simply do not have as good of movement as the enemy player. Now, a lot of times when I'm in a McCree battle, I have great movement, but I'm not the best McCree. I'm the first to say that. I'm top 500, but I'm not the best McCree. I miss a lot of shots, okay? But I dodge a fuckload of shots. Even on really good McCrees, I can still dodge a lot because my movement is so sporadic, and it's not like a routine movement. It's not like I'm going back, forth. I mix things up. I'm random, and that randomness helps me avoid shots. Same thing with Widow, especially with crouching. I'm going to go over this a little more in the next part, but just remember that this really helps in 1v1s because you're going to be a lot harder to hit, and you can focus a little bit more on dealing damage. Well, they're going to be like, holy shit, how do I hit this person? So they're going to be focusing on you moving like a crazy person, and they're going to be probably moving less in most cases because they're trying to focus on hitting you so much, and then you could focus on hitting them once you get your movement down. That's why it can change games. On top of that, I think it's important to also realize and note that it is much harder to use a lot of these things with the tanky heroes. Roadhog, we know he's a big boy, and because of that, it is pretty hard to dodge stuff with him. Then again, he has hooks, so I think it kind of makes up for it because no matter where you are, the hook will get you. So whatever. Anyways, I'm a little upset because of my last game. Now, with that being said, Lucio's speed boost is also an extremely important game-changing sort of factor, right? Not only can it be used to help you push through enemy lines and start an attack, but also it can help your players, your teammates. It can help them dodge attacks. One of the most frustrating things for me as a DPS player is trying to hit a speed boosted like McCree who's just strafing back and forth, and it's just so hard because he is moving so fast, and it's so hard to even just get flicks on him, let alone track them. It's really underrated, and it's a huge part of what can change games and help you win these 1v1 battles. On top of that, I think that it's important that I do note that positioning in these games is also extremely important. I can make an entire hour-long video on positioning. I think I will in the future, but just remember, I kind of think of positioning as where you're putting yourself in relation to your team and the enemy team in order to hide as much of you as possible while still remaining fully functional. So this is sort of like using line of sights. And if you're a healer, it's like hiding behind a wall while still being able to heal your whole team. Or if you're a widow, it's like hiding behind a corner of like a building and using your line of sight to hold certain angles. It's things like that which are really going to help you step your game up and advance to the next level. And all of these things will really help change the game, and it all focuses around movement and your positioning. Alright guys, so part 3 is all about how to improve your movement. Now, I know I talked a little about this, but there's something called strafing, which is when you move side to side to avoid shots. Some people will say AD strafing. What that refers to is the standard WASD keyboard, the WASD, as your movement keys, and just hitting AD, which will put you from side to side, sort of helping you dodge bullets. Now, it is sometimes important to mix things up and to not just do AD, because remember, if your opponent figures out you're just going to side, you're going to be a lot easier to track and hit and kill than if you're being a little more sporadic and random with your movement. Now, I think that it's hard to say, like, what's the best way to practice movement. I do think it's one of those things that you learn over time. So my most important piece of advice here is to just play the game and just constantly think about your movement and what you can do better. If you die, think like, okay, what can I do differently here? Things like that will really help you improve. But if I had to think of a certain way, I would probably think of the practice range. In there, I would do some strafing and also practice my aim while I strafe. Particularly on non-moving and moving boss, doesn't really matter. But just practice moving and also hitting your shots, because remember, you know, I said it myself, like I can dodge a lot of shots, but I do have problems hitting them. So you gotta sort of be able to find that happy medium between hitting shots and also dodging as many as you can. I think it's important really to do this with McCree. I think that he is so important right now in the meta, and on top of that, he dies kind of quickly if you can't avoid some damage. So really practice with him, especially if you're a McCree player. I think that something called corner peeking is really important to learn, which is where you put yourself up against the corner of some sort of object and you quickly peek around just for a fraction of a second. You could do this with any character which can kind of shoot or has some ability, right? So you just quickly peek one fraction of a second, get your shot off, and you fall back to cover. And this, you'll see this at all levels pretty much, especially in the pros. They do this all the time. I think McCree is probably one of the most annoying heroes that can do this. So if you learn how to corner peek with him, you're a step ahead of the most. I also think doing this with Widow is important, especially in Widow v Widow battles. Just that fraction of a second is all it takes to kill someone or to die. So with that being said, practice range is probably my go-to place to kind of practice my strafing and my technique, and then I'll bring it into quick play where I can test it out on some other people who have much different movement than bots. And so that's where it kind of steps up a notch, and you kind of take what you learn in practice range and what you've been practicing and put it to some like real scenarios, you know what I mean? And so that's pretty much how I think you should improve your movement, through practice range. Alright guys, part 4 is thinking about enemy movement and how you can counter it. So the first step in this process, this needs to be going through your head every second of every game, every time you engage an enemy, is how are they moving? You know, what sort of style is it? Is it AD strafing? Are they jumping at all? Or is it some more random style? And then you use what you just learned and what you practiced in the practice range and in quick play and all this time, you use that to figure out how to counter it. If they're AD strafing, sometimes it's best to mimic them and do the exact same thing, because maybe you've practiced hitting those shots, right? So it all comes down to your own personal preference. You'll pick up these little habits of yours, right? It'll develop over time and you'll be able to hit these shots more consistently. But I think the most important part is just sort of realizing and acknowledging the movement of the energy, of the enemy. That's like the first step in this thing, and if you can do that, you are miles ahead of tons of players, and you're doing a great job, honestly. With that being said, I just want to make this a huge point, so please listen. If they jump, I'd like you to give them a hug when they die, okay? Don't jump. Whatever you do, do not, or at least don't make it a common habit, right? Don't jump in these fights, especially against hit scan heroes like Widow, Soldier, McCree. If you jump against a Widow and they're far away and they're scoped in, guess what? That's a very linear motion. There is no randomness in that jumping arc, right? You're going up and you're coming down in a line, and you're going to get headshotted and you're going to die. Same with McCree. He is going to just pop you in the head and then shoot you in the body twice and you're dead. it's just not worth it. Keeping that randomness on the ground with your movement, being as fast as you can as you move, that's what's going to keep you alive. So do not fucking jump. Alright guys, so I just want to conclude this video with a nice little wrap up. So movement's important because of how vital staying alive is for team fights. Dodging attacks and dishing out extra damage in these fights is going to be the difference between winning and losing. Movement also gives the upper hand in 1v1 duels, especially if your movement is better than the enemy's. I would say 9 out of 10 times you're going to win that fight. That'll give your team the advantage, and this is mainly seen with hit scan heroes like McCree. I'd also like you to remember that positioning and movement go hand in hand, and to constantly think about where you are in relation to everyone else in the game. Use the practice range and quick play to perfect your strafing techniques, and then use your game knowledge and learn about how other players move, and then take the technique that you've learned in quick play and practice range and apply it to counter their movement. And finally guys, remember not to jump. You're not a bunny rabbit. You don't need to be bouncing around. And just keep that in mind, and I guarantee for some of you this is going to help you take your game to the next level. This is what some of you need to do more of, and I really hope that this helps some of you guys out. I think that movement is extremely important and can often be overlooked. If this does help you in any sort of way, please let me know, and especially, seriously guys, if you have some sort of question about any part of this video or some aspect of moving I didn't cover, please ask away. I'd be happy to answer. So with that said guys, I'd like to say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all have a great day. I hope to hear from you guys soon. Take it easy and peace.
Good fucking
Good job,
shit.
guys.
Victory!